The United Nations has issued a stark warning about a preventable famine in Gaza, urging immediate humanitarian action as hundreds of thousands of Palestinians face life-threatening food shortages. UNAID Chief Tom Fletcher stressed that with proper access, this crisis can still be stopped, calling on Israel to open crossings and allow unimpeded delivery of food, water, and essential medical supplies. According to global hunger monitors, Gaza City, the enclave's largest urban center, along with surrounding areas, is experiencing critical food scarcity amid Israel's ongoing offensive against Hamas. Fletcher highlighted that during an earlier ceasefire, thousands of truckloads of aid successfully reached civilians, proving that large-scale humanitarian relief is possible even under extremely challenging conditions. The UN chief emphasized that hostages must be safely released, looting must stop, and a full ceasefire is urgently needed. He warned that international humanitarian law is being increasingly undermined, and failure to act now could lead to a catastrophe that is entirely preventable. Israeli strikes continue to target residential buildings and infrastructure, including a 16-floor tower in Gaza City, displacing hundreds of families. Civilians are fleeing to overcrowded southern tent camps along the coast, where conditions remain dire. Despite the danger, Fletcher underlined that with coordinated global action, starvation and suffering can be minimized. The humanitarian chief also called on the international community to respond without delay, insisting that protecting civilians and ensuring access for aid is not optional. It is a moral, legal, and urgent responsibility. He stressed that famine in Gaza is not inevitable, and immediate action can save countless lives if trucks of aid are allowed to reach those who need it most.
It's a preventable, a predictable famine. But we can stop it. Gaza's women, elderly, children can't eat. Statements of concern. And a reminder, as so often, during the ceasefire earlier this year, when I was in Gaza, thousands of truckloads of aid entered, proving that we can save lives at scale if humanitarians are allowed to do that. So we need the crossings open, we need functional access, we need unimpeded safe passage inside Gaza, we need the looting to stop, we need the hostages to be released, we need a ceasefire now. And all of this, of course, is against a backdrop where the rules of war are being corroded day by day. We've heard Israeli ministers talking openly about flattening Gaza and forcing people out permanently, bombing food aid, and so on. And I've said consistently, I don't think that we have to choose between condemning the starvation of civilians in Gaza and demanding the unconditional release of hostages. We must do both. We don't have to choose between fighting anti-Semitism and holding Israel to the same laws as everyone else. We must do both. I've just come from a call with our excellent humanitarian coordinator, resident coordinator in OPT, and the simple version of our plan to stop the Gaza famine, ceasefire, hundreds of trucks a day, full access, safe routes, end the bureaucratic delays, restore power and water, and allow commercial traffic. None of that is complicated. Those weapons are not coming from nowhere, as I say. The weapons that are killing us, our people, who are going out towards the sound of gunfire in order to try and save lives. And so I do want more of a conversation about not just the legal obstacles that should be put in front of the attacks on us, or the sort of sense of impunity, but also physically the damage that's being done to us and to those we serve. Now, I don't know about arms embargoes and those other questions there for the political colleagues, but I don't want my people, our people, to be killed. That goes for the courageous humanitarian workers and those we serve. And they're being killed in increasingly sophisticated ways. That is one of the really alarming things, even in 10 months in this job. Increasing use of lethal autonomous weapons, drones and so on, which are then targeting our installations and our people. And Steph has already talked about, even in the last couple of days, implications of that for some of our properties in Gaza. On those issues that I raised in that Security Council briefing back in May, it's not about me being vindicated or anything else. I think everyone, people are speaking out clearly in public on what needs to change, what we're seeing. It's not for me, again, to get into the legal minutiae of all of this, but we need a ceasefire. We need this to stop. And we must continue to speak out boldly.
Has the GHF sort of changed in any way that might convince the UN to work with them?
We believe in the importance of principled, neutral delivery of humanitarian aid in line with humanitarian principles. And, we're not in a conversation. Yes, now and again you hear that we're in a conversation about putting UN supplies through GHF or other mechanisms like it, and that's not a conversation that we've been having. We have no intention of working through their mechanism, but we do have an interest in promoting this conversation about the importance of neutral, independent humanitarian aid delivery. And that's a point we make to everyone, including them.
If there would be any partnership.
So as I say, we're not putting UN impartial aid through the mechanism. There was a conversation about the conditions on the ground and how can we overcome the challenges that we described, the obstacles that we face on the ground. And we restated, as we do in all of these conversations, our commitment to the way in which we deliver aid and the fact that we can do this at scale. We know how to do this. As I say, we were getting in 500, 600 trucks a day during the ceasefire, and we've now faced deliberate obstacles to that work. And we want everyone to hear what those obstacles are, and we want them addressed. We are facing massive amounts of looting of our convoys, but we assess that most of that is coming from desperate civilians, absolutely starving, trying to feed their families, or from some of the armed gangs that operate, with seeming impunity around those areas that we then have to drive through on those very pre-scripted routes that we're given to drive along. Our assessment is that Hamas are broadly staying out of the way of the aid distribution, which we do through community networks and so on. We haven't hit major obstacles from them, but of course they've got to release the hostages. That is an obstacle clearly, and we need some sort of transition to a better system for running Gaza as a whole. So they haven't been a major impediment to what we're doing. Can I guarantee that every grain of rice that gets looted from our lorries doesn't end up on the market in some way or doesn't get stolen by a Hamas fighter? No, it's impossible in those chaotic conditions to guarantee that. But we feel very confident that we have a system that ensures the majority does get to civilians if we're allowed to operate. If we could flood Gaza with hundreds of trucks a day, the looting would go away, the prices in the markets would come down. So we know we can do that, and we can do that even in these incredibly difficult conditions that exist.
Have you met with Hamas about this?
We meet with absolutely everyone, as I say, all the time in every environment we work, that we work in.